Morning, y'all. Today I'm going to do a real quick demo using acrylic paint, watercolor paint, color pencil, and marker, doing monochromatic. And I'm going to use the same color for all of them, blue. Because I'm using blue, you might be using a different color. So you might say, well, how do I do red? It's basically the same way that I'm doing blue, okay? Or yellow. You would do that with yellow or orange or any other color, right? The point of this is to show you how to add value to very simple shapes. So I found one of our examples from when we did perspective, and I'm going to be using that to add value today, okay? If you need to watch this video multiple times, that's fine. I just want you to have a clearer picture of what's expected for your project, okay? I have watercolor here. I have acrylic paint. So I have my blue, I have my black, I have my white. One thing that I highly recommend with acrylic paint, if that's what I know a couple of you have that, you do have to shake it. It settles. It's like orange juice or any kind of, some juices and things that you have to shake. You know, it says shake well. So make sure it's closed, okay? Because I've shaken it when it's not closed and paint goes everywhere. But shake it really hard, okay? So you mix it all up, right? I've had acrylic paint sit in a box for years, and then I realized, oh my gosh, I'm like, I still have this? And then all the paint is settled, like the color is settled, and I have to shake it and it's fine, right? So just keep that in mind. I have markers here, just plain old Crayola markers. And then I have colored pencils, but any colored pencils will do. You don't have to have Prismacolors, okay? Couple other things. I have my water and it's only filled about halfway. It's not filled to the top. And I'm using a flat brush, okay? So it's a brush that when you turn to the side is pretty thin, okay? That's gonna help me get closer to the edge of my shapes. I have pencils just in case, paper towel to dry off my brush, and then my paint on extra Halloween plates that we had in the house, because you don't have to have a paint palette. A paper plate will work just fine, okay? So let's get started. Okay, so one thing I'm doing, and I would really wait till this is totally dry, I'm kind of doing a big no-no, is I'm outlining the edges with a blue colored pencil if I'm using watercolor, right? That kind of takes away from the rough edge. I mean, obviously still use blue tape if you can. You could also use the edge of a notebook, but it kind of helps define the space. And I'm ripping the paper because it's too wet, but you see the difference, I hope, right? Especially on this side where I use blue, I did not use black, right? One thing that students do when they outline is they think that it has to be a black outline or white outline, which looks really great sometimes, right? But I'm suggesting that you use whatever color you're using here. You're using a similar or different shade, obviously, different shade, maybe the same shade as the color you chose here, but wait till it dries, okay? So come over here to the circle. One thing that a lot of students have become more familiar with is like following the shape when you color, right? And so if I'm gonna shade this cylinder right here. I'm gonna start with the smaller side first. For me, it's just easier. You might start with a bigger shade, right? Plus, I'm gonna go dark to light, right? So I'm gonna press really hard here with my color pencil. So I'm doing the same kind of technique that I did with my watercolor. Okay, I'm gonna keep on going. I'm gonna gradually get lighter. The good thing is if I get too light, I can go back. It's easier to go too light. That's just a rough sketch, right? You're gonna go back and make it smoother. And a couple ways you can do that, I'll show you. Okay, let's go back over. Make this a little bit darker. I'm gonna keep this light, okay? So I still have this transition from dark to light, right? One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a lighter color, and I actually don't have white, so I'm gonna use kind of a gray. Okay, so if you don't have a white colored pencil, gray would work fine, and just go back in. I'm gonna color over top, and it makes different values and actually adds to your work. Actually gives it more. And some students are like, well, miss, going back and forth like this takes forever. Of course it does, right? But in art, you have to be patient. You can't rush it. If you're finishing something in a matter of a few seconds, are you really trying your best? Probably not, okay? So you can see the transition from dark to light on here, okay? When I get to the circle, I'm gonna go in a circular motion, and I'm gonna start at the edge and I'm gonna go inward, okay? This is called chiaroscuro, okay? I'll put the word in the chat. Chiaroscuro, say it to yourself, chiaroscuro, okay? It's the fancy term for adding value or shading, and in a lot of terms, it's the way you shade a circle to make it look like a sphere, okay? This one's gonna be more flat because it's a sphere and not a circle, but the term is called chiaroscuro, okay? Fancy. I'm just gonna literally go in a circle like this. So you start off kind of dark, it's almost like a spiral until you get like a little circle there, right? It's really light here. You can go back and color in the spaces you don't have colored in. It's darker for me on the edges. Notice I'm still going in a circular motion. I'm not going straight back and forth, right? If I go straight back and forth, it doesn't really add to my piece. Okay, I'm gonna use my gray again so you can see in the circle, right? That it goes from dark to light. It's a little sketchy, right? I'm also doing this quickly, but I'm gonna use the same gray that I used before and maybe go over it again with blue to make it darker, right? Make sure I color in the middle. And sometimes this, you know, you might want to smooth it out. There's also some of you I know that like this little, like a little more sketchy, right? But you can tell that it goes from dark to light. Okay. One last thing I'm gonna do with, one last thing on here. I'm gonna outline and I'm gonna find a darker blue. This is more of a purple, but that's all right. Anything between the two just to create dimension, okay? I'm hoping that you see the transition in light. I'm hoping that you still can see that it's in perspective. I probably would go back and maybe make some of this a little bit darker, but for the sake of time, I'm just showing you the transition from dark to light and how to shade the inside of a circle, since some of you might have more round shapes in your still life, okay? Okay, so with marker, a lot of times you just have one color, unless you have like a marker set where there's different shades of blue or different shades of red or whatever, right? So I'm gonna show you how to do value on your still life using marker, if that's all you have, right? And I'm gonna use stippling, okay? You know with stippling, the closer the dots, the darker it appears, right? So I'm gonna kind of do the same thing that I did before on the other circle. And I'm gonna do it really fast. So I apologize if it's messy, but I just want you guys to see the general idea of how this would work, right? You would get further in and the dots would get closer, farther apart, sorry, not closer together. You want them closer together on the edge right here, right? So if I do one side of the circle, right, my dots are gonna be really close together right here. They get a little farther here, okay? So I'm hoping that at least in this area right here, you can see that it's darker and it gets lighter, right? This is another way, and you're still following the shape. Notice I did dots, but I went in a circular motion. If I was doing a square, I would go down, right? Like this. Make sure you follow the shape. I cannot stress that enough, okay? So let's do acrylic paint. Okay, last but not least, acrylic paint, okay? I still have my paint on the plate right here, okay? I'm probably not gonna end up using all this, so maybe I'll let my kids paint with it. The only thing with acrylic paint is that it doesn't come out of your clothes. So if you've never used it before, be careful. Wear like a paint shirt. Wear a shirt you don't care about. Don't wipe the paint on your clothes, right? There are ways now on YouTube to search for ways to get acrylic paint out of your clothes, but I grew up in a time without YouTube, so I have a lot of clothes from way back when that still have acrylic paint on them, and I've washed them several times, okay? Okay, so with acrylic paint, make sure that your brush is in the water here, okay? And I'm gonna go over to I'm gonna dab my paintbrush here, okay? And I'm gonna start mixing. I'm gonna mix more blue with white, okay? I'm actually gonna go back and start with a darker blue. And I'm gonna move my brush this way, right? Okay? But you have to move fast with acrylic paint because it dries really fast. So I'm adding white to it. This is another way, another reason why blue tape might be beneficial, because you know, again, can control where your color is going. Okay, so make sure I clean off my thing. You can already see a transition from dark to light, right? I'm gonna go back with the darker, and sometimes acrylic paint, you have to go back when it dries to make things darker, lighter, etc. I'm gonna go back to my lighter blue over here. Okay. I see a little strip of white right here. I don't know if you see it or not, but I'm gonna try to get that mixed in. Oops, and I made that too dark, so guess what? I'm gonna go back. Oh, they heard the timer. Okay. You see the transition? All right. Okay, so I've gone over this a little bit more with some darker blue, some lighter blue, some white, and I move pretty quickly because this paint dries pretty quick, right? One more thing I'm gonna show you guys, and I kind of did it here, although with watercolor, it tends to make its own value when it dries, so it's not one solid color. But if you're nervous about doing dark to light, you can legit just, let's say you have an object that's a box. Each side of your box can be a different shade of blue, right? So I wanna go in there and just do this lighter blue over here. I'm still holding my brush at the side. I could literally legit just, I'm not gonna stay within the lines. This is why I like blue tape, right? I was never one to stay in the lines. You could turn your brush, but you wanna keep your brush strokes in the same direction. Notice I'm not turning my brush this way. I'm leaving it this way, right? So if I wanted to keep the side of my shape one solid color and then do, I don't know, a really light blue, make it really light blue. So I'm just mixing, just to show you. When I mix, I move both sides of the brush to make sure that I've got all the color mixed in there, right? And then let's say I just turn it around to make it easier for me to paint. So you guys can see it, there it is. Okay, and let's say this side of my box is a different shade of blue. So if you don't want to shade dark to light, so I go down the middle first. This is why tape does help. You could use the side of a notebook to help you mask off certain sections, but do not turn your brush, okay? The same kind of goes with colored pencil. I got pretty close to the edge, right? So you can see one side has dark to light and the other sides are solid color. You can leave it solid color. You guys have been doing that during your do first as well, so I'm not too concerned about it, right? So there's all kinds of ways that you can approach so you can see the different blues and shading from dark to light, going in the shape of going in the direction of the shape, the stippling, okay? I'm hopeful that this is helpful in helping you figure out how you're going to approach your still life. One other thing, I'm gonna go back to the colored pencil, or not the colored pencil, the watercolor. And it's not fully drying, but you could also go over it. I'm just gonna experiment with a few things, right? I'm gonna go over it with some marker. I'm gonna do some dots in the corner, right? You could do watercolor and then another medium on top, like marker, right? Okay, so you can see the transition from dark to light, just how close the dots are, right? I would probably wait, this is still pretty wet, but you could also use colored pencil on top. So you paint maybe a solid color and you go over it with colored pencil to add more value, right? You could go into here, I'd be careful with marker, but I'll show you, okay? You could go into here with marker, but the marker's not gonna stay very well. You can see it, but because there's wax in colored pencil, it's not gonna mix as well. But I'm all about experimentation. Experiment with materials, experiment with the things that you have. Even if you just have one thing, enjoy it, have fun with it, okay? Let me know what questions you have and be prepared to share what you've worked on during this time. Thank you.